Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on Arrow Season 6, and this is going to be my review for Episode 10, otherwise known as the mid-season premiere, otherwise entitled Divided. So we left off Arrow into the mid-season break with Episode 9, the mid-season finale, where, just to sum it up, I guess, we saw some tension between Team Arrow as, Oliver had been told that someone on his team had betrayed him and was going to be a witness and, reveal that, and support the theory, I guess, that Oliver was the Green Arrow. We found out it was Wild Dog. He was doing to protect his daughter. And that just caused Arrow, or Team Arrow, might I say, to be divided. And then also we saw the coming together of the Cabal, or the villainous group, led by Cade and James. But we do find out, I think it's halfway through this episode or something, that this is 5 weeks later. So it doesn't start off a week later after what we saw in the mid-season finale. This is over a month later, so the team have been sort of dealing with this for a while. Some of the events that happened in this episode sort of make you think, okay, did everyone just go away for a month or something? It's a bit inconsistent, but we'll just forgive that for now. But I guess one of the first things to bring up from this episode was that the Bertinellis are back in this show now. We've seen a lot of Bertinellis die throughout Arrow's run over its 6 seasons, so they even do mention that, this Bertinelli, I can't remember what his first name was, I don't think it's that relevant, because of what happens to him at the end of the episode. But this Bertinelli, they'll talk to him, referencing, okay, a lot of the other Bertinellis are either dead or they've just, gone missing and run away from Star City. But they do name drop Huntress in this episode when they're talking to him, which is pretty cool, I guess. And then we also do get that cool, that kissing thing that Black Sign does, the kiss, scream, sonic kiss, if you want to. I'm going to call it Sonic Kiss, because I think it's got the best, the name just rings the best, in my opinion. We do find out that Diggle likes Halo in this episode, which is pretty interesting. So I think we can now confirm that Diggle is a part of the Xbox Master Race. So PC Master Race is triggered, because Diggle is now a Halo fanboy. Now, as I was saying before about how, in episode 9, Renee had sort of stuffed over Oliver and sort of caused the whole tension in that episode. Obviously, Team Arrow and Oliver did go a bit overboard in some other areas, but, Renee was the cause of all of that. And it does end up in him getting fired by Quentin from the mayor's office as well. Will that ever come back into play? Will Renee possibly get rehired? Probably down the road, once everything's forgiven and stuff, especially if we don't meet Quentin's new assistant, they don't become a major player in the season, you would have to think Renee will get that job back at some point this season, I guess. But they finally came back to the stuff that we saw in episode 1 of this season when, when Black Siren, infiltrated the Arrow base, and we find out, that the whole base had been bugged. We don't find out in this episode, Team Arrow finds out in this episode that the place has been bugged. We've known about it for a couple of episodes, or at least a decent amount of episodes ever since, Cade and James was involved, because he's the one that's, looking at all the surveillance footage, because he's the one that wanted it all done. So they finally find out in this episode, which is good. And it does bring up the issue of how the secret identities thing isn't that big of a thing now with all the different characters. So that's sort of out the door when it comes to all these different villains, even though, a decent handful of them already knew what was going on with the identities of our heroes on the show. Now, as I said earlier in the episode, we did have the Huntress name drop. And they do another Gothamite, if you want to call them, a Gotham City-based person, reference in this episode when the Bertinelli guy was talking about how it's hard to get in contact with Oliver or Green Arrow, and says that, maybe she have a signal in the air with a silhouette of an arrow or something like that. Obviously talking about an arrow signal, which is a reference to the bat signal. And even on the Flash in the premiere for season 2, I think it was, they actually had a Flash signal thing, which has never come back into the show at all. That was just fun for that episode, and obviously that's just a little reference in this episode once again to have more, Batman connections, I guess, to Arrow. Now, one thing I have to bring up, I can't really show it in this video because I don't have the footage, but did that number plate that Felicity was looking at, I'm sure a lot of you guys would have seen it if you were actually watching the episode, did that number plate say arsehole? But in numbers and letters mixed up? Did it say arsehole? I'm pretty sure it did, but let me know if I'm right with that in the comment section down below. Now, one thing we knew that was going to be coming in this episode was the whole Dinah and Vigilante aspect of the episode and them getting back together, because obviously they were former partners, both in the police sense, but also in a romantic sense before, apparently Vincent got shot in the head and died. But obviously he's back, he's a metahuman now. But the thing is that she doesn't know that he is a part of the Cabal when she's doing it all and hanging out with him and stuff like that. So that's later in the episode it does come back to not necessarily bite Vince on the ass, personally between him and Dinah, because I think it was always going to get found out, or things weren't going to go, exactly as a lot of people might think they would have. But it's more in the Cade and James sense when Caden approaches him at the end of the episode and goes, you know what? this isn't the best thing, and he sort of, got everything under control because he thinks he knows how to control Dinah. Will that happen in this season? We'll have to wait and see. I do believe Vigilante will die this season, even though it looks like he can't be killed because he just heals really fast. But I have a feeling he's going to die possibly protecting Dinah in some sense, but we'll have to wait and see in regards to that. One of the coolest scenes in this episode, though, was definitely the scene when Oliver is like surrounded by the Cabal. I thought that was a great scene. But there was little hints. I have been saying in a couple of videos on Arrow, previously to this video, about how I do think Richard Dragon is going to kill Caden James. You do get a little like seed planted, or at least a little hint to that happening, or at least he's like unrest, or he's not approving of what Caden James is doing when Caden does let Oliver go. And I think he says, I think the quote was, "For a really smart guy, that was a really dumb move." Something along those lines. So I think Dragon eventually will sort of get sick of doing everything Caden James's way and want to do everything his way and take over and possibly kill Caden James in the process. Another storyline that continued in this episode was Quinton struggling with, having hope for Black Siren, like whether he should have hope or drop it all and see her as a threat. And it just involves like the family albums of Our Earth One, Laurel, and stuff like that. And I think this is going to be a very interesting storyline to follow that isn't action based. I know Arrow is like action based, vigilante stuff, but you need that, more calm storyline to follow on the side. I think this is going to be a really cool one, an interesting one to follow. We know there's going to be more of this, especially in the episodes to come. So I'm excited to see how they do it without moving everything too fast. Like move it at a natural pace that relates to the show. So hopefully that's what they go with and actually make it a really interesting storyline to follow. The fight scene on the docks, like that big warehouse on the docks, was really cool and really great. It was wonderfully directed, and I didn't know going into this episode that the episode was actually directed by James Bamford. Now, the reason I say James Bamford is because he always directs the best action-based, action scenes and stunt scenes and stuff. If he directs the episode, it's going to be great. In some other scenes, like maybe just normal dialogue scenes, the directing might not be as good. But whenever it comes to action scenes, just, general stunts, it's always really good camera movement and stuff like that. And I was not disappointed with that in this episode. The one thing in that whole fight scene I wasn't happy with was the T-spheres that Diggle was controlling, and just the T-spheres coming into it at all. They're a bit too overpowered. It just doesn't fit. Mr. Terrific is in the scene, he's throwing them and stuff like that. I'm fine with it. But when they become remote controlled drones that can shoot laser beams, I'm not for it. So hopefully we don't see more of that to come, because it sort of just didn't take me out of the scene. I was just like, oh, okay, well, I'd rather see Oliver going around and punching stuff. I know he was against a lot there, but I'd rather see that guns firing or, fist fights. I don't want to see flying drones with laser beams in my vigilante show. We did get that attempted reconciliation scene towards the end, which got a bit awkward, and I thought they could have been done a bit better, but they were sort of strapped for time at the end of the episode, so I understand why they didn't either draw it out longer or just, make it work better. I'm struggling to come up with the words how to describe it, but it just could have been done better. I thought the dialogue was a bit and I thought they were chucking blame left, right, and center, and I thought the people that really deserved to maybe cop a mouthful from someone weren't getting it. Oliver brings up Dinah and hanging out with Vince, and she just goes, okay, I'm not pointing fingers. You should point the finger. She was hanging out with this dude that was trying to kill you last season, so what the hell? So they should have been pointing fingers at her in that scene. Instead, they were trying to, I know they should be pointing fingers at Renee because of what he did, and it was sort of a dog move, a wild dog move, if you want to call that that. But yeah, Dinah did a bad thing there. She copped nothing, apart from copping a fist or copping a smackdown, I guess, from Vincent or Vigilante earlier in the episode. So she should have got a mouthful from someone, but she got off pretty scot-free. I do like, however, I did mention the Black Siren thing earlier with Quinton, but I do like how Thea brings up the parallels between both Malcolm Merlyn and Black Siren. How Malcolm was seen as evil, a bad guy, but when it comes to it down at the end, he could love people, and that's with Black Siren. She might have bad intentions with some people, but deep down she still cares about Quinton and possibly some other people on the show. So I think that's a great parallel to bring up in comparison, and I'm hoping they actually come back to that in this season, or at least use it as motivation in that storyline, because I think Black Siren is eventually going to be redeemed in regards to her relationship with Quinton. I'm not saying she's going to be joining Team Arrow, which a lot of people might think might happen. It could happen, but with Dinah Drake there, it seems a bit weird. Both of them are on there, so maybe Dinah might leave and Black Siren might join. One of the two. But she will be redeemed in a sense of her relationship with this Earth One Quinton and having a father figure, but a father again, if you want to call it that. So I like that parallel, and hopefully we come back to that, might I say, throughout this season. Now, but halfway through this episode, or the back half of the episode, if you want to call it that, we did see new Team Arrow being formed with Renee, Curtis, and Dinah. I almost forgot her name. I was like, who did I forget? So yeah, Renee, Curtis, and Dinah. We saw a new Team Arrow formed. And they actually find their own lair, if you want to call it that, and it is the old Helix bunker, which had been in this season already. It was like an episode... Was it in episode 1? No, it was in episode like 2 or 3 or something like that. We'd seen it earlier this season, but now Curtis has like morphed it back into a lair, which is a bit weird because it's a place where villains have been this season, so it can be a bit of a risky place to put your lair, but we'll see how that works in the episodes to come. But that's where they're situated now, and I guess there'd be like internet connection down there already installed, so it wouldn't be too hard to get it up and running. But we end this episode with Diggle getting his arm back and like the tremors going away, which wasn't too surprising. It had been in the episode a couple of parts then with that whole storyline, so I wasn't too surprised that came back. And Diggle will most likely be suiting up next episode in the streets of Spartan. We did see that he does have like a new suit with like some red detailing, and even like I think it's the same helmet but with some red detailing. I think he has a new actual suit, complete like body suit or body armor. I think that's completely new. So we're going to see that debut next week, which should be pretty good. But next week's episode will be this is like the first part of like a 2-part for next week, because this episode was called Divided, and the next episode is called We Fall, and if you put them together, Divided We Fall, it's a common quote. So it's like a 2-part or 2-arc story, I guess, these episode 10 and episode 11. But overall, I thought this was a solid return for Arrow. It did have some elements which I did think were like, oh, okay, you didn't have to do that. I thought some parts with Diggle might have been seen as forced, just because I think they wanted to like have him in the episode a decent amount so that, implant storyline sort of worked, like with him controlling the drones and stuff. Didn't think that was too necessary. Arrow sometimes does have issues with that just because its cast is so big and they're not always in the same area, so they're always jumping from to and from. You could say like with Quentin and Thea, but I found that suitable because there's only like 2 or 3 scenes with them, and it did relate to the Black Siren storyline also with the Renee storyline, how Quentin had fired Renee. So that did relate. But it was a solid return for Arrow. It wasn't my favourite return for this season. I do think I did enjoy... I guess you could say Black Lightning, but it was a premiere. It wasn't really a return. But I think I enjoyed Flash more than this episode. But I am excited for Arrow this back half. I do think it's going to pick itself up. I'm really excited to see what they do with Richard Dragon this episode. We did see hints of it, of how badass it can be, especially when he killed Bertinelli. And just his entrance into that warehouse in the docks. Like that voice he uses, it's really commanding. It's very villain, like, big bad villain. I'm excited to see what they do with him in this back half. And let's hope that he ends up being the big bad for this season and not Caden James. I think that's why there's so much Caden James in this season already, because he's not going to be the big bad. So they're getting the most out of him that they possibly can before moving on to Richard Dragon as the big bad. That's what I'm hoping they're doing. So let's see if that actually goes down. But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be awesome if you could drop a like on the video to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below. What was your favourite part of the episode? What didn't you like too much? And did I miss out any big parts that you thought I should have talked about? Just let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'll catch you later, guys. Goodbye.